Alright guys, as you can see, I got my Triumph hat on. I got my Msrp Motorsports t-shirt on. Msrp Motorsports is the indirect sponsor of this video by virtue of the demo Tiger 900 Rally Pro that I've been riding. It is a blast to ride. If you want the short review is 900's better. Hello folks, and welcome to my personally long-awaited review of the Tiger 900 Rally Pro. Full disclosure, I do work for a Triumph dealership, and this is a demo bike from that Triumph dealership. I do currently own a 2013 Tiger 800 XC, which we will be doing some thorough comparison with. Try to figure out through this video whether or not it'd be worth spending the money on this one. For 2020, Triumph has made a completely new motorcycle here. Obviously, looks totally different. All LED lighting, that new 900 engine, which is actually an 888cc triple, now with the T-crank and the new firing order, so we'll get more into that in a minute. Really big change as well, going to the tubeless spoked wheels, 21 out front, 17 out back. Removable subframe, removable passenger pegs. That's kind of a big deal for the off-road guy. On my bike and previous generations of the Tiger, that's all welded together, so if you did lay it over off-road, it was a bit of a to-do to get it corrected. Now you can just replace those parts and get on your way. Foldable brake, foldable shifter. Triumph really making some steps here for the actual adventure rider. A couple other things we will get into during the review. I will touch on a little bit of pet peeves and negatives about the bike as well. Ignore this back here. This is just my tank bag. It's not on the tank, as you can see. I think it's time we just hop on and go for a ride and quit talking about it. Huge TFT full color display, which is really nice. On the same token though, I am kind of concerned how that's going to hold up over time, especially hardcore off-road riding with dust, dirt, mud getting on that. If it's going to scratch, I think it'd be brilliant if somebody made a nice screen protector for that to lay over there. Of course, there's a million different options on this thing. Let's just get her going. All right, so where to start? For those of you who have seen some of my videos before, you might recognize this area. This is the same parking lot where I did my Hyper Motard 950 review. I'm going to talk very briefly about what this video is and is not. This video is not going to be, you know, like the press videos in Morocco where they're flying around off-road doing all the jumps and crazy stuff like that. I'm going to try to ground this in like a real world type scenario. Again, being a Tiger owner, I know how I ride my bike and can make assumptions how other people will ride their adventure bike, 80% of which are going to be the Starbucks guys that never see a mile of dirt. Don't use them, but that's just my opinion and a discussion for another time. Right there, I think that's a really good way to get into talking about suspension. We got some huge show-off forks up front with almost 10 inches of travel. I mean, 9 point something, whatever, and a brilliant shock up back with about the same amount of travel. I'll tell you what, it's really good. It's really good. Fully adjustable up front. Shock is adjustable up back as well. Real world roads where they're bumpy and you got stuff going on, you got a lot of action coming through the suspension, you really do have a great sense of input from it. It's not overly soft. I know some people may have been concerned about that, especially just testing it out, just sitting on the bike in the showroom or whatever. It does feel kind of soft, which I can actually kind of demonstrate here. So if you're just sitting here and you kind of hold the front brake, I mean there's a lot of motion and commotion going on there. So I mean, it feels like there's no spring in there almost. But again, in practice, not the case. Real quick, I do want to talk about the riding modes. Road is the default. It will always default to road on startup, unless, let's just say, okay, let's go to Offroad Pro. Of course, traction control and ABS will get disabled then. Shut the bike off. Let's turn the bike back on. Now it's letting you know right there, bike will start in road mode unless you want to return to your previous mode, which is Offroad Pro. So that's kind of cool. It keeps the memory of which riding mode you were in the last time, and you can, on startup, quickly and easily just go right back into that mode and once you get used to it, sure, it's not a big deal. Of course, 6-way IMU, ride-by-wire throttle, none of this should surprise you anymore in 2020. The cruise control is Triumph's kind of like rocker switch cruise control, I call it. So you hit down once to bring it up, down once again to set it, and then from there you can see we're set at 52 miles an hour. You can advance, decrease that as well. Now for a little while I didn't know how to deactivate it. If you hit the brake, that'll do it for sure. Of course, clutching will do it as well. But the other thing is, if you're just cruising and you just want to coast, after that you actually roll the throttle forward and it deactivates it that way as well, which is kind of neat. That T-crank 3-cylinder sounds absolutely brilliant. It sounds so good. Of course, getting a little action with the quick shifter there. Okay, so we're cruising around 75 miles an hour. As you can see, RPM's right in that 5,000 RPM range. Nothing crazy. It's not screaming its head off or anything like that. Totally comfortable cruising. It's actually pretty good. I would say definitely better than my Tiger as far as wind management, with the new windscreen and the new deflectors and that new shield, which looks small, and it is small, but it actually does a really amazing job. I don't get any buffeting. I don't get any kind of crazy weird, disturbing, turbulent wind or anything like that. Does a fair job. On the topic of wind deflection, these handguards, which are plastic, that's about all they're good for, is deflecting the wind. I don't know why Triumph didn't bring over the aluminum backed handguards like we see on the 1200 XE, which, I mean, if you're already producing them for that bike, you'd think it'd be easy enough to incorporate them here. Maybe the design was just a hair different with how the perches are and everything, but I mean, still, I would really love to see aluminum in the back of the handguards there. We do see aluminum up here though, in the nacelle area, if you would like to call it that. So no more are the days of running spoked tubed wheels on your big Triumph adventure bike, even though the 1200 had the tubeless wheels a while back. I can tell you from personal experience with my 800, the tubed wheels can definitely be a pain in the butt. Let's be honest, it is a road bike. And we'll talk about the off-road a little bit here, and this bike is certainly no slouch when it comes to the off-road stuff. Any adventure bike is realistically going to spend most of its time on the pavement. That's just the way it is. All right, everybody, as you can see, we got some off of road here. I'm not going to go crazy or nothing. I am on the factory tires, which are, let's face it, street tires. Right now I am in off-road mode, not Offroad Pro at the moment. Let's see how she does. I'm kind of interested to see how the traction control reacts and all that kind of stuff. Shift it up in a second here, hitting some berms. I'll tell you what, the suspension's really good. Suspension's really good at the low speed stuff. With the I think I lost my camera bag there. Yeah, almost. Okay, so let that be a lesson to you. Well, the suspension works good enough for me to feel totally comfortable when this is almost being knocked off, so that should give you an idea, right? And no problem. Oh, some soft stuff here. Some soft stuff. Keep it together. All right. Woo! All right, this is probably a really good time to talk about the T-crank and the 132 firing order. Does it make a difference off-road? I'm here to say absolutely. The input down low compared to the 800 is a totally different beast. You have so much more feel and the bottom part of the rev range. Show forks up front, soaking up all the bumps. Look at that. Now when you push it harder, it does get a little soft, or I should say tends to feel a little soft, but that's okay, you can't adjust it. As you can see, big bike, working through it, everything being kept together. Like I said, I'm not going crazy here, folks. Woo, what a ride. Like I said, second gear, big bike like this is awesome. All right. Woo, what a blast. What a machine. For as big of a bike as it is, the weight does disappear, I'll tell you that. Very low center of gravity. They did take the engine and put it a little bit further forward and lower in the chassis from the older model to lower that center of gravity, get a little bit more weight over the front end there. And as you can see, the results kind of speak for themselves. Quick shifter works brilliantly off-road. The standard foot pegs on the Rally Pro are street pegs, in my opinion. They're kind of disappointing, considering Triumph has those brilliant aluminum pegs that you see on the off-road stuff. I can feel already the pressure through my boot from the foot peg. And as you can see right now, I'm just kind of idling around. Second gear. On my bike, I would definitely have to remain in first gear just to avoid stalling out and everything like that. Brilliant. That big 21-inch front wheel doing its job. Look at this. Look, right off the bottom in second gear, no problem. The old generation, the 800, would have struggled a little bit with that. Wow, I can only imagine with some decent tires what you could do with this thing. A couple real quick talking points that we're gonna hit on between the two bikes. Obviously, 900 is a good looking bike. Not that the 800 isn't, but this is obviously a lot more modern, especially in the front end when you got the LED lighting going on over here versus the old school incandescent bulbs over here. Definitely got more of a bug eye thing going on over here for sure. Meanwhile, over here we got more of the, I would say, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, if you ask me. Now you can't unsee that. Like, one thing that I noticed kind of right away when I seen the bike in person, and really as a good thing in my book, is you can see here my turn signals on this are down low. If you lay the bike over, it's definitely getting hit, and as you can see, mine's definitely hit the dirt a few times. Over here, Tiger 900, they moved it off of here up to here. Much more out of the way, much more out of the firing lane there. Very good. I like that. Windshields. So I got this one is an aftermarket adjustable windshield on the Tiger 800. The adjustment on it, got to be honest, is not the quickest and easiest thing in the world. You got two screws on either side there. You got to unscrew them, adjust it, put it where you want it, tighten it back up. This, one hand down and one hand up. Simple as that. That's the way it should be. A really hilarious comparison as well. Old tired LCD screen over here, full color TFT display over there. Wow. Do you really need the TFT though? If you ask me, no, not really. The LCD screen displays all the information that it needs to. The LCD is of course modular, customizable, adaptable, big, nice, displays great information, high resolution, a lot of functionality. Not totally necessary, but it is a nice luxury. The back of the bike, gotta say, this is where the 900 really lets you down. What is that, Triumph? What is that? Pretty ugly, not very attractive at all. They could put the tail light right into the fender itself, kind of sticks out there kind of cartoonishly. Not a big fan of that. However, as you will see, the turn signals back here do act as a brake light as well, so maybe theoretically we could hack that off, get rid of that altogether, and just run with the turn signals as the brake light. I don't know, just a theory. Coming back over here, 2013 style, I think that's much more put together and attractive in my humble opinion. Subframe and passenger pegs all welded together to the main frame on the old school 800. On the 900, voila, bolted on subframe, bolted on passenger pegs. If you drop it, bend something, break something, unbolt it, bolt a new one on. Very cool. Triumph thank you. That's something that a lot of the Tiger guys have been wanting for a long time, along with the tubeless wheels, so good job. The thing I am going to harp on a little bit is the seat. Seat height is adjustable on both bikes. The seat on this, I gotta say, there's a little bit of movement there, and you can kind of hear that kind of squeakiness. That's something that is definitely noticeable, especially when you're in those situations where you're switching back and forth between your feet in an off-road situation or something like that, or even turning around in the parking lot. You definitely feel the seat move, and you definitely hear the squeak, and it is kind of off-putting, especially on a brand new bike. Coming back over to my bike, however, I will show you this. so maybe it's something that adds just maybe not as apparent to me because it's, you know, been under me for so long and all that stuff, but obviously a lot more movement in my seat. So nitpicking on the movement in the seat on the 900 is kind of I don't know what you want to call it, but I don't know if over time the squeaking kind of part of it will go away and it'll just be loose like that and it won't register to me anymore. But going back to the topics of the seats, mine being a 2013 XC, these seats are not heated. The seats on the Rally Pro 900 are in fact heated. I did try them out, wasn't really impressed, to be honest with you. I had it on high, kind of felt like a slight warm. It just, I don't know, it didn't woo me quite in the way that I hoped it would, but it is there. It is functionality built into the bike. Let's talk about heated grips. The Tiger 900 Rally Pro does come out of the box with heated grips. One little nitpick here. So Triumph's been doing this lately with their one little button heated grip thing, and it works, don't get me wrong, it does, but that little button, kind of hard to search for, especially with a gloved hand, and especially with a gloved hand with a thick glove on it, like in cold weather riding, like you would expect to use heated grips with. On the flip side, I did have the Triumph original heated grip kit on this bike before. I had some issues there with the grip itself and the wiring, so I did opt out of that and go for the Oxford set of heated grips there, and these work fantastic. I couldn't recommend these highly enough. I did wire these in with the relay, so it does go off, ignition off, so there's no worries there. Even so, they do have a smart sensor in there, so when your battery's running low, they automatically shut off anyway, so it's not going to kill your battery if you forget to turn them off. Suspension. This is going to be a quick one. Tiger 900 Rally is better. You got those enormous Showa forks up front with almost 10 inches of travel. I like saying almost 10 inches because I'm a guy. But anyway, there is no comparison between the bikes as far as like off-road suspension and performance. Of course, my bike did not feature the WP suspension of other previous generation models. Brembo over here, Nissan over here. I'm pretty sure Brembo's going to win out on that one. I'm not pretty sure, I'm certain of it. Those Brembo Stylomic calipers are mint. Superbike status, even. Awesome. Work great.
One thing I do want to point out as an absolute failure, in my opinion, of the new bike is this new absolutely flimsy skid plate. Very flexible, very bendable, just not very well built, in my opinion, as especially compared to the older design that's a little thicker, more substantial.
A couple of other quick things I will talk about is the location to unlock the seat is now under here, along with another power outlet for your passenger, which is nice. On the older bikes, it was back there right under the tail light. Of course, cell phone pocket here, which, let's be honest, nobody's going to use that, but it is there. And coming up under the seat more, this little tray here, those are your lock barrels for your luggage, and a fuse puller, and of course your Triumph toolkit, just a couple basic tools in there. You do have this little wing nut here with this kind of tray that flips out of the way for your battery. There's your diagnostic port right there. So there you go, right under there is the old battery and your fuse box. Of course, battery tender lead already installed. That's thanks to Msrp Motorsports. They do that on all their new bikes. Your air box has now been moved from under the gas tank to back here to more of a cartridge style air filter type thing, so it makes it much more simple and easy to get in there and service and change that. Thank you, Triumph. Boy, is it such a job on the old 800s. Another quick thing with quality of life, I will say this. I am glad that they stuck with a nice metal key that does have an immobilizer in it, but it's still just a key, not like a keyless system like on the Scrambler or the Tiger 1200 for that matter, which I'm not a huge fan of, to be honest with you. The old Tiger 800, you just basically have the two bars that correspond to the slots. On the 900, you do have this here that corresponds to one of these two positions here, whether you're riding in the high or low position. So just an extra thing to line up when putting the seat in, as opposed to the 800. And there you go. Nice soft feeling seats. After a couple hours, your butt's going to get sore. So, but in the real world, what translates to what's effective and what's not? Obviously, the tubeless wheels, that's a no-brainer. You don't got to deal with tubes. You get a slight puncture, you ream it out, you plug it, you keep going. The LED lighting, I will say this, the low beam is luminous, it's very bright, but it's aimed in such a way that it's very short beam travel. So the high beam is definitely necessary at night off-road. The auxiliary LED lights up there, as you can see, do help with the low beam stuff to the side. They're more of like a flood. Do they replace cornering lights, say like on the Multistrada, if you're familiar with that, or even the Tiger 1200 or KTM Super Adventure, or any of those bikes that have cornering lights? I still think the cornering lights are better, but at least you'll have that for flooding out to the side. When you put the high beam on, however, those will go out, and then when you toggle back off the high beam, they don't come back on. You have to hit them again to come back on, which I think is kind of a weird kind of thing. Like, if you're not going to have them come on with high beam, whatever, but then when I toggle back off high beam, if those could come back on as a memory, that'd be nice. Very approachable. The seat is actually much thinner through here, which allows you to grip the bike a lot better while standing up. It's more of a dirt bike type feel to it there with just the thinness through there. I will say this, however, these frame guards here, whatever you want to call that, as you can see, when you're sitting at a stoplight, they do kind of like rub on the inside of your thighs there, and I only really noticed that on the second day of riding after just a while of just being sore on the inside of my thighs from that. So I don't know what's going on there. The radiators, you can see, for 2020 is a split radiator, and that allowed them to move the engine further forward and down lower a little bit, which is nice, lower center of gravity and everything. However, extraction, the air coming through the radiator comes right out here and right onto your leg, and it is noticeable heat. It's not nothing that's horribly offensive or distracting, or doesn't mean you can't ride in warm weather at all, but it is a noticeable heat, which I have never noticed heat on my bike before coming from the engine. One thing I did want to point out too is some of you might be somewhat intimidated using the center stand on a bike like this, just because it is a big bike and everything like that. I will say it's actually quite pleasant and easy to get the bike on the center stand. No drama at all, really. It doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. I didn't really have to wrench the bike up or anything. Very smooth. They really thought that out very well. Good job, Triumph. Certainly don't be intimidated to get this thing up on the center stand if you have to. No big deal at all. And of course, that makes it much easier to clean and lube your chain, fix any punctures or anything you have in the tires with those tubeless wheels. Another couple real world things we'll talk about here, and I'll kind of overlay in some video. I was getting about 45 to 50 indicated miles per gallon at highway speeds, so keep that in mind. After a full tank of gas, I was getting an indicated, I think it was like 190 or something mileage to empty, which is fairly decent. About, to be honest with you, about after 150 miles, you really want to get off the bike and stretch your legs anyway, so that's not a huge deal for me. As we kind of come to a close on this review here, I just want to finish with a couple final thoughts. Triumph has taken a bike that was already incredibly versatile, an incredibly good road bike, a halfway decent off-road bike considering its size, a comfortable tourer, and just an all-around enjoyable motorcycle to ride. And they've made it better in every single measurable way. They have listened to their customers and brought things to the platform that we've been asking for a long time, whether it's the tubeless wheels or the removable passenger pegs and subframe, the all LED lighting, all this kind of stuff. And it's just, it's a fantastic motorcycle. It really is. The power delivery from that T-crank is just, it's so intoxicating. It sounds so good. It's just awesome. You just really want to use your right hand and get into the meat of that power, which, by the way, is up on the bottom end, up through the mids, and up on the peak torque figure and around the same peak horsepower figure. And some people might criticize that. For me, I really don't. You know, I think it's the power delivery on this bike is fantastic, and you don't need any more, I'll put it that way. If you want a little more, you know, a la something like a multi-strada or something like that, well then go for the multi-strada, which is basically a big tall sport bike. Now in the same token, I will comment on this. I do think that Triumph left a lot in this motor still in terms of tuning. I think we're going to see a newer updated Tiger 1200 come out with higher peak numbers, and then after that we're going to see another generation of the Tiger 900 with higher peak numbers as well. Just from the feeling I get from the motor and the power delivery, I feel like there's a lot left in this motor. The whole idea of this for me was to determine whether or not it is worth the step up for me in my personal use. My bike is a 2013 Triumph Tiger 800 XC, so that's the 21-inch front wheel on there with the spoke in the tubes and all that stuff. My bike does not have cruise control. My bike has an old school LCD display. It does not have traction control at all. It does have ABS, but it is not lean sensitive ABS like on this bike. I mean, I'll just say this. I mean, for me, is it worth the upgrade? I would say not really. The bike in itself is better in every single way, every measurable way possible. Suspension, brakes, engine performance, comfort, wind protection, all those things. It is better in every single way. But it also comes with an MSRP of $16,700 US. Now my bike is paid off. I don't owe any money on it, so it costs me $0 per month other than gas, tires, oil, and maintenance and that kind of thing to keep it going. So for me, I think about it like this. My bike is pretty much 85%, or you know, maybe even up to 90% of the capabilities of this bike, minus some of those creature comforts I talked about. And you know, for $17,000 almost, I can buy a lot of fuel and tires and oil changes, tenting spots and hotel rooms and all those things that make that the actual enjoyment of that bike usable. You know, the actual adventure part of that motorcycle, I get to do more trips, I get to put more miles down the road on the bike that I don't have a monthly payment on. And so for me, when I weigh those options out like that, the old school 800 kind of wins for me. Now, of course, money no object. Of course, there's a clear choice there. I mean, let's be real here. You know, if money was no concern of mine and I had an unlimited amount of wealth, there'd be absolutely no reason for me not to purchase this motorcycle tomorrow.